welcome to Gary's Gardening Tips. This is the second episode of this series, and I am Gary Graham from Bord Bia, and again wearing my GroMór hat, working with GroMór campaign, which is a fantastic initiative where some of our top garden centre owners have come together, people from all across the industry, to share their great knowledge and inspiration with you, making gardening easy and accessible. And today I'm delighted to say I'm speaking with Paraic Horkan. Horkan is a garden centre owner. I think they now have 4 garden centres across the country. But Paraic is also a great communicator and a great font of knowledge, and he spends a lot of time on TV and radio sharing his information. So Paraic, how are you today?
Great, Gary. The weather is absolutely beautiful. We've had 3 weeks of glorious weather. A little bit of rain yesterday, and we're actually looking for rain at the moment. But gardening weather, it's been absolutely fabulous.
What's the biggest question that you're getting, or where? Because I know you spend a lot of time responding to people and their issues. And
I always encourage people to start with bite-sized chunks and break things down into projects. So a big area we're seeing at the moment is around the whole grow your own. So people are interested in growing some herbs or some tomatoes. They're hugely interested in sowing seeds inside. And I'm a great advocate of sowing seeds in just simple containers, something like a recyclable coffee cup. Sow seed on the top of it, sit it on your windowsill. Within a couple of days, the seeds have germinated. And if it's simple things like cut and come lettuce, you can actually cut them in the coffee cup and use them in the kitchen. So encouraging people to sow seeds, to sow flower bulbs at the moment. Simple things like begonias and dahlias can be potted up now for planting out later in the season.
Can we focus in on containers, Paraic? Because I have a lot of space around me at home, and you have too. I can see the beautiful Jack Montoya birch behind you in your garden, but unfortunately not everyone has that space. And the size of containers, it's really important, isn't it? Because sometimes containers can be very small and they might look very cute, but they're hard to keep going, keep the water, keep plants alive, and that's often a mistake that people make. So what would be your tips, the really important principles of keeping plants alive in containers and small pots?
I love container gardening. So in the back of my house, where it gets the sun, I've got maybe 20 or 30 containers that I grow a wide range of plants in. So size is important, so get a large container because you'll fit more plants into it, but also it's far easier to maintain. So when you water that container, it will store the water for several days, and you're not out every evening having to keep it watered. Because once it's planted, really the key ingredient to keep it going to flowering right through to the end of the summer is water and some liquid feeding. So a good sized container is very important. And then when planting it up, a good quality compost. And you know from the growers that the Irish compost, you cannot beat it. So I use the GroMór compost, and I would add some slow release fertilizer to that. So a 6-month feed that will slowly release right through the summer. And I'm planting up my containers at the moment. In a lot of containers, I like to mix it. So I'll have things like strawberries and maybe some lettuce and some herbs with some edible flowers as well. So I'm a big fan of pansies and violas, because they're edible, they look very attractive, but mixing them up with some other edible plants like strawberries and vegetables. So you don't have to have your containers just full of colour. You can slip in an odd strawberry plant here and there, or a couple of lettuce plants. And one of the things I teach my own children is, rather than cutting the head of lettuce, to actually peel it and take what you need on a regular basis, and the plant just keeps growing again. But as we come into May, I'll be planting up my hanging baskets in particular, and I'm a big fan of long flowering summer flowering plants. So my favorites include things like begonias, white bacopa, which is a great trailing plant, a lovely plant called Bidens, Bidens. It's a really nice bright yellow flowering plant. Million bells, which are in the petunia family, small little dainty flowers. Again, they flower right through the summer. In the west of Ireland, fuchsia does really well. So I'm a big fan of all the different varieties of trailing fuchsias that do superbly in pots and containers. And once I've them planted, the basket planted up, I like to stick in a couple of nasturtium seed, because there's a lovely variety called Tutti Frutti. It's a nasturtium. You sow it from seed, and if you pop it in around your hanging basket at this time of year, it'll germinate in the basket and it will grow and trail right over the edge of the basket. So it just adds a little bit of colour. And of course, nasturtium flowers and foliage are edible. And so again, I'm adding those sort of little plants in that I can use, not just for colour, but also in my gin and tauntaun later on during the summer. So things like the viola flowers or borage flowers, they're edible, but they're very decorative in salads as well. So container gardening is a great way to grow so many plants.
I do like that approach, that filler, where you look for something for impact, you want to fill the pot, and then you want something trailing typically to the front as well. I think you've given some great examples there. What would you recommend in terms of a bit of good physical activity? What's your thoughts on that?
In my life, I get up early, but I try to garden in the evening time, in the cool of the evening. So from 6 o'clock onwards, I try to get about an hour and a half into my garden. So the type of things that I'm doing is at this time of year, in late April, early May, I'm pruning the summer flowering shrubs. So things like hydrangeas, Lavender is being pruned back at the moment. Lavender, I'm pruning back. So anything that flowers during the summer period, from June right through till early autumn, I'm actually pruning at this time of year. I'm also pruning the plants that have gone out of flower. So many plants like the yellow Forsythia or the red flowering ribes, the red currant, or the winter honeysuckles, those plants that are fading and going out of flower, my winter heathers, I only cut them yesterday. So they're being pruned back at this time of year. So I'm pruning the spring flowering plants, those that I've enjoyed the colour of since Christmas, really. And I'm also pruning the summer flowering plants. And when you prune, you feed. And at this time of year, it's an excellent time of year to start feeding your garden plants. So your garden roses should be fed. All your summer flowering shrubs, like your hydrangeas, should be fed at this time of year. So get yourself a good quality, slow-release shrub fertilizer. Put that around the base of the plants now. Repeat it in about 4 to 5 weeks' time, and that will give the energy that the plants need.
I was just going to ask you to maybe give us a couple of comments on lawn, because I know you're a man who likes to keep a little bit wild as well for biodiversity.
So I always advocate to leave your lawn, let the dandelions, let the daisies flower, let the clover when it comes into flower as well, because the bees absolutely love it. Feeding the lawn is important, so just use a straight feed, one without weed killer, and look for a slow release fertilizer. So something like the Osmo is very good. It feeds it very slowly over a 3-month period. So don't be tempted to put on any agricultural fertilizer like 10-10-20 because you drive your lawn mad. So slow release fertilizer at this time of year. Leave the weeds to flower and really keep it mowed on a regular basis. So I try to keep my lawns trimmed about every 10 days. So allow the dandelions to flower, and once they're going over, start to trim the lawn again. And of course, all the clippings, it's a great time of year for starting a compost heap. So if you want really good garden compost, and start using your lawn clippings, but also lots of household waste, shredded newspapers, eggshells, tea bags. There's so many of our compostable material that we use in our kitchens that can be used in the compost heap as well. So it's a super time to start. It's also a great time of year, Gary, for sowing new lawns. And again, we're seeing a lot of interest around that. The weather has been brilliant in terms of getting the soil ready, getting it raked and the stones picked. But it's also a great time of year for sowing the seed. So if people are ready to sow the seed of lawns, do it now, because with the rain coming, the lawn will germinate in 2 to 3 weeks' time, and you'll have a fabulous lawn for summer.
Paraic, of course, we don't know for sure what's going to happen in the weeks to come, whether or not garden centres will be fully reopened for the public to enter. But I think it's important that people understand there is still access to online shops such as your own, and a lot of garden centres and retailers are taking calls and doing deliveries. Isn't that the case?
Garden centres are offering both online services with direct delivery to your home, and many garden centres are offering a phone and delivery service as well. So really my advice is to check in with your local garden centre, give them a call, see what they're doing. But so many people are buying plants and compost and all that online, but also getting home delivery from the local garden centre.
And we have a full list up online as well, up on GroMór, up on the Bord Bia website as well. So there shouldn't be a problem for people getting access. And these are things that we spoke about, the equipment, some pots, containers, growing media, and so on. Paraic, as ever, it's a pleasure talking to you. You're looking great in the West. The garden is looking good. Hopefully we'll get to see each other in the flesh sometime soon. Take care.
Thanks a million, Gary. Appreciate it. Bye for now.